Oh, sure. Because somebody is finally figured out selling person.
At this time, I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We have a couple things that we want to start with. First off, join me in welcoming Sharon Hansen as Marshall City Administrator. This is her first City Council meeting. I'm glad there's a nice crowd here to welcome her this evening.
Nice you guys all come welcome.
Sheila Dubs has served as our interim City Administrator since last summer. She's done actually a very, very good job and done kind of double duty in her regular job, served as interim, addressed a number of things. So I'd like to thank Sheila. We actually have a presentation that the council has gone in on, and a card and a clock to mark her time that she has served as interim City Administrator. And Jane DeVries is here. Jane, you want to just raise your hand so everybody knows Jane. This is Jane's last City Council meeting, unless there's a special one between now and the end of the month, so which there won't be. So Jane has served over 38 years as a number of capacities in finance and most recently as city clerk. So join me in thanking Jane. Okay, so agenda item 2 is to consider the approval of the minutes, or approval of the agenda. Now, I'll ask if there's any additions or deletions to the agenda. Obviously, people are here to discuss some
Mr. Mayor,
items, so.
I'd like to add a discussion session to the meeting, to the agenda tonight, to go right after the approval of the minutes before the public hearing is opened up, and to allow the folks here, especially if they have a spokesperson, that they can come up and discuss their issues. It's a discussion portion. Obviously, it's not on the official agenda, hadn't been properly public notice, so it's not an action item, but I think it would make a good listening time.
Is that in agreement with the members of the council?
I would second that.
Yep. So with consensus, that is added to the agenda, and Kyle, as our city clerk, you'll add that to the agenda.
It'll have to be a voter.
Yeah, there's be no action, but just it'll be on the agenda. So that'll be added to the agenda. So we will move then to agenda item number 3. This would be considered the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting as well as the council work session. Both were held on November 14th. The council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
I move approval of both.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, so then the discussion item, and again, welcome everyone here this evening. About a month ago, or perhaps or maybe it was the previous meeting, Councilmember Lazinski brought up to the council the suggestion of forming a task force made up of contractors and city council members to address some concerns with building issues in the community. Council also agreed to that, and then following that, prior to Sharon starting, interim city administrator Sheila Dubs and I met with kind of some spokespeople of the group, and I asked at that time that when we're moving forward, I can appoint members of the city council, but I really wanted suggestions from the contractor group. So, Mike, can I point to you, because you were there, and then I talked to you yesterday too about some suggestions of names, and you were still checking with people at that point. Okay, so Chet, you're the spokesperson?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got a couple of things. I don't
So
know
Chet,
how this happened.
Chet, I'm going to interrupt you.
Chet, you're going to be a TV star, so you got to move forward and get on the microphone.
Because this is live on TV, we have to use the microphone. So, welcome, Chet.
Thanks for having me. I don't know how I got roped into this. Chet Lockwood, I stand before you. We're trying to address a chronic issue we feel here in Marshall. I've served on many boards, including the Chamber Board for 6 years, and still currently 8+ years with the EDA. And I can speak with experience the reoccurring issues the Marshall Building Department has had on this community. The efforts to change the culture of this building community have been a Band-Aid on a bullet hole at best and kicking the can down the road in reality. This department needs clear and concise culture change. It's time for leaders to lead and make decisions for what's best for Marshall and the future progress and growth of this community. We also need to form a committee. We believe this committee should be the majority of building experts in their industry, not one person pushing their agenda on the rest of this community. Without a culture change, the committee is a moot point. First, we need to fix the culture, then the ordinances. It will not work the other way around. I think we'd like to formally request putting this on the agenda for 2 weeks from now so we can fix this chronic problem before it's too late. Thanks for your time.
Chet, before you leave, Mike, are you prepared for names yet, or do you you'd rather?
We believe, Mayor, we need to address the culture before we come up with a committee. I don't believe, and I think I speak for most of us, that a committee is not going to fix the culture we have with this building department and its overreaching antics.
Okay.
Let's take a hand show on who agrees with it. Everybody agree?
Thank you, Chet.
Thank you.
Greg, I'll turn back to you. You were any additional comments you wanted to make?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank everybody that attended, and I think that the council has heard your concerns. I don't know if we understand all of them, but I know we've heard them. We're certainly interested, and I know that our staff are interested in making sure that we both follow what we're required to follow, and that it's done with reason and responsibility. If there's places that we need to view the ordinance, there's obviously, you guys are in the business, you know that there are certain things because of the size of the city of Marshall and state requirements, that there are some things that are just not flexible. But obviously there's probably other places, especially within our ordinances, that we can go back and revisit that. And I think that that's an important dialogue. I appreciate the effort that it takes for you folks to come forward. I know that some of you do it with professional and personal fears. I want to assure you that those fears, I think, can be put to rest. There's not going to be retaliation to you for coming in here and putting your feet forward. We're going to do everything that we can do in our power to be fair and just in this and to follow a good process. And I think it's important, and thank you, Chet, for coming forward. Thanks, Mike, for the work you're doing. I know there's a number of other of you that have been working hard on the background on this, and I hope that we can keep a forward and constructive dialogue, move forward, figure out what we need to do to resolve this, work together to make that happen. I don't think there's a person here that doesn't want to see Marshall move forward and do it right, but do it fair. So I don't have anything else, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Craig. I have asked Jim Lisinski, council member, and Glenn Barracoler to serve on this task force moving forward. So once we have the other names, then we can move forward then. So, Dr. Alfalter.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you know me. Leroy Affolter. I'm not a contractor or builder, but I'm a citizen of Marshall. And I had some thoughts on all of these things that are coming up. You have codes and ordinances as guidelines and not absolutes. If we're dealing with a project of something, if it's being built, does it really compromise safety for the building owner if something is done? If you're having some type of squabble about, does it meet the guidelines or the codes? Does it have a compromise on the safety for the public if you allow the variance or whatever it is that the builders are looking for? Would it cause future use of that structure to be compromised without having excessive monies involved with changes to the structure, thinking ahead? Do the questions make the cost prohibitive to do the project if the project would meet the above considerations along with some common sense decisions? I'll answer anything, but
Okay, thank you.
that's my input.
Thank you. Great. You have to come up.
Greg Taylor. I didn't come prepared to speak, but I think I need to clear the air a little bit. We're all done with dialogue. We're all done with new committees and researching the codes. We've got a vicious, redundant, hold us tying our hands. There's nothing going on in this town. We're tired of it. Now you people get it changed, or we'll change you. And you'll be down the road, 2 of you, next November. That is not a threat, that is a promise. And if it doesn't get cleared up quickly, there might even be some other action before that. We have had it. And I'm not Mr. Nice Guy. A lot of these people are. They did not authorize me to speak, but I've spoke to many of them for months and years. Now, the Taylor family's been sitting on a $1 million deal for 2 years now. We are not building in this town until the complexion and the faces and the personalities are gone. We're dinking around down in Sioux Falls. We bought land. We're dinking around over in Watertown. We've had it with you. Now you get it changed or we'll change you. And 5 of you need to listen real closely. That's it.
Anyone else here wishing to speak? Once again, thank you. Mike, maybe I'll be in contact with you with the names. So thanks, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for being here. You're certainly welcome to stay for the entire meeting. But I'll move on then to agenda item number 5.
Wasn't me.
Agenda item number 5 was the consent agenda.
Where's the hour?
Oh, we'll come back because that was published at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ready? So, where agenda item number 5 is the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are on the screen. Consider the authorization to approve towing a storage agreement between the City of Marshall and Pulver Motor Service, LLC. Consider the engagement letter for audit services for 2017 financial statements. Consider a variance extension for Border Electric at 609 South 4th Street. Consider the variance extension for ISD 413 Parkside School at 1300 East Lion Street. Consider the application for a temporary on-sale liquor license for the Friends of the Orchestra. Consider the application for a temporary on-sale liquor license for Lyon County Historical Society for December 14, 2017. Consider the application for an exempt permit for the Marshall Golf Club for an event on St. Patrick's Day, March 17, 2018. Consider the resolution adopting the complete streets policy for the city of Marshall, and finally consider the bills and the project payments. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I would move approval of the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by, I'll get back to you. Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Now,
I'd like to see number 6 and number 8.
and is that in agreement with the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion?
I would agree with that.
Sure.
Okay. So, Kyle, we will move 6 and 8. And now I will then, the motion on the floor is to approve the consent agenda as it is now. Discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, now the new agenda item, which was agenda item number 6, now is agenda item number 13. Glenn, you have a question?
Well, just a few things here. One of the things I noticed is that for a couple of the items that the amounts for the new contract are less than the old contract. So am I right that I think it was $85 for a vehicle tow before, now it's $75? And then the storage outside was $25, now it's $20, which is pretty good considering we only got one bid. Do you agree, Glenn? Or no, is this the police department or?
Kyle, you have this.
Kyle? Okay. Anyway, I thought that was kind of pleasant to see. The other thing I was wondering about is item number 5 in the contract says that they will provide insurance coverage. And I know in a number of contracts or agreement we state that they should have a certain amount of insurance coverage. Is that something we should be including in the contract, that they have to have a certain dollar amount of insurance coverage? Would that be something good to add to the contracts?
Jane or Kyle, do you want to address that?
I don't think Jane or Kyle have any experience with that. Dennis, do you maybe have any insight on that at all?
Because I know in a number of other contracts you do, Glenn, or Dennis, you have some dollar amounts in there. And so would you suggest we put something in, or do you feel like it's an unnecessary item?
Can I make a comment on that?
Go ahead, Craig.
Perhaps we should just ask the bidder what kind of coverages they have, and if that seems sufficient in our opinion, just ask to include the fact that they maintain at least that coverage moving forward in the life of the contract.
Provide an insurance, certificate of insurance is fine.
And that's,
Yeah, why don't
Sure.
you come forward?
so while you're coming forward, I don't know if you heard Glenn's earlier comment that very favorable bid, so thank you for the
Thanks for leaving a
bid
little
and
money
service.
on the table for us. Appreciate it.
We did submit a certificate of insurance, and I believe we are covered up to $3 million per incident on liability.
Seems adequate.
And then under our garage policy, if we're housing cars, I think it's up to $1 million.
Okay.
But I would definitely recommend putting that in your contract to have at least $1 million coverage.
And that way in the bids in the future, if we put it in the bid contract or bid agreement, then all
Absolutely.
bidders would have to meet that same requirement.
Yes, absolutely. We bid, I don't know if you're familiar with this a little bit, but we have 5 divisions. We're based out of Rochester, is our corporate office. I've lived here my entire life. And we bid on a lot of contracts with stuff, and our customers require that. And I would say, you're a customer of ours, I would definitely put that as a requirement to have no less than $1 million.
So include it in both the bid proposal and the contract.
Absolutely. And to be even eligible to bid, I would say ask for a certificate next time, submit it with your bid. Because I believe we did submit that with all our other certificates. So
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
And Glenn, you have another point?
Well, I was going to address this to Glenn over there. I mean, didn't we buy some facilities that are going to be storing vehicles in the future? And how does that affect this contract? Then we would have our own indoor storage in the future and would not require them to do it?
Only if it's adequate. If we have more than we can take, because sometimes they have to be held for court.
Yep. And that'd be my comment. I think the storage that we have is security. And Jim, I think, if I'm correct, that we have to be careful about putting other equipment in there because we have to it's almost like having it sealed. In order to protect chain of custody, we have to make sure that we're careful about what and who goes in and out so we don't contaminate what we have, correct?
That's the only vehicles that we place in there are the vehicles that we seize and forfeit into the forfeiture process.
Okay.
The abandoned vehicles, the ones that are just left out of town, we end up getting adjusted all the, we may hold them for the amount of time it's needed before we get either transfer them to the city's name and sell them or we crush them.
Anything else, Glenn?
I guess one last small item is that the city clerk is shown as Jane, so we maybe want to get that changed on the agreement. Yeah.
She still is.
Oh, you're still, okay, I was thinking he was.
Yeah, she doesn't
Until
get
the
to
end of
take
the month.
her nameplate till December 1st.
Okay.
Don't give her the bums rush.
Okay.
So with that, Glenn, you want to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the authorization to approve the towing agreement between the City of Marshall and Pulver Motor Services LLC.
Second.
Motion by Glenn, seconded by David. Discussion?
Can I offer a friendly amendment to have him put the insurance requirements in the contract as suggested by Mr. Pulver?
Actually, Mr. Schaefer with Pulver Towing. Not related.
You accept
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I would
Accept that.
agree to that, certainly.
Okay. Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll keep moving forward with the agenda until we approach 6 o'clock, and that will be the time of the public hearing on the proposed levy. So agenda item number 14, consider the variance extension for Border Electric, 609 South 4th Street. This was considered by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval. This is an extension of a previous action. Glenn?
I guess my question is that they've been looking for this property for 4 years and they don't seem to have any luck. Is it likely they're going to find it over the next 2 years? Or, I mean, is this going to keep going on and on that we give extensions? Or is
It's
it
up to you completely. We haven't had any significant complaints for their outside storage, and that's what it's about, is it's the outside storage, and they need to keep it within that enclosed fenced area. And sometimes during heavy times and delivery problems and the level of activity going on in this community for electrical needs, especially with the Lincoln County stuff going on, it's a lot of work. So they have been looking for space. The cost of the space, though, becomes an issue, and that's why they're staying where they're at for now. So I would expect that as long as the variances are extended or approved, they will continue to operate out of there. So we recommended approval the last couple times, and we probably would continue to if, in fact, we don't receive complaints about the outside storage or parking problems.
The question I have here is this was issued originally in 1974 as a conditional use permit, correct? As I read in here. The original conditional use permit was issued in 1974.
Right.
So that conditional use permit goes with the property.
That's right, but the variance is for the outside storage.
Was that variance required in 1974, or is that variance something that, I mean, are we, I agree with the variance, but
Right.
are we overstepping the bounds of the conditional use permit that was originally issued in 1974, since conditional use permits go with the property?
We could certainly reference it to Dennis.
I hope they find a better place, but is the variance, do they even need a
Sure.
variance?
Dennis?
It's only since the last couple of years that the variance has been there. 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 or 4.
It was issued as a business in 1974.
No, I'm just saying, this business.
Could you follow up on that?
Well, I guess one of the points I was trying to make here is that, I mean, this is an automatic approval. We could have it more than 2 years if we're going to, every 2 years, we're going to keep approving this thing.
Right. We did ask them at the Planning Commission meeting what their intents were, and they do still intend to try to find adequate space at a reasonable price and would like to relocate.
And I guess the point I was making is if there's a conditional use permit issued as non-conforming use, they may not need a variance, and we have to work with them as a community to get them to move, but they may not even be in violation of anything.
I think my question is that I understand the conditional use permit for the zoning part of that, for the zoning category, but isn't the variance for outside storage? It has nothing to do with the conditional use. It's the fact that it's a non-conforming piece, a non-conforming use that requires a variance because we don't typically allow outside storage.
Unless conditional use was given.
The conditional use was given for that business.
Maybe not for outside storage, just for the use of it.
They'd have to dig back to what the original condition.
Right.
I mean, I'm just curious of what, and I hope they find a different place. But if I get Glenn's point, but the point is we may be overstepping our bounds by making them have.
So Dennis, you can look into the history of that. So,
Yep.
but we do have that request before us for action. We have some questions that.
What's the cost on a variance? How much are they paying to come in for the?
More than $400. So if in fact they don't need it, we would certainly return their money.
And it's $400 whether we do the variance for 2 years or 10 years, correct? Let's do it for 5.
Is that a motion? No, on
Yes, it
I'll
is.
second that.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim to allow the variance for this purpose for a period of 5 years, and also with the understanding that there will be research done on the necessity of the variance adjustment.
I think there is. But.
Okay.
Discussion on the motion. If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes.
We probably don't make money at $400, and it doesn't help them any at $400. So let's just make it simple.
Yeah.
This time we'll move back to agenda item number 6. The rest of the consent agenda has been approved. It is, my intent was to move back to agenda item number 4. Thank you for the correction. And this is the time, and we're getting close to 6 o'clock. If I don't want to be later than 6 p.m. So this is the public hearing on the 2018 budget and tax levy. The council has had many meetings beginning in the summer of this year to discuss the 2018 budget as well as the tax levy that would support that. So the hearing is tonight. This is timed so that if there's input here and additional work that's necessary, the council can do that at the first meeting in December and for the consideration of the adoption of the budget, which would be on the December 19th regular city council meeting. So with us tonight is Finance Director Carla Drown, who will give an overview of the 2011 levy or 2018 levy and budget. Carla?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have put a PowerPoint together here for you.
While you're doing that, so Carla will do a presentation. This is a public hearing, so after Carla's presentation, then we'll open up to public comment as part of the public hearing. Carla?
All right, so like the mayor said, the purpose of this meeting is to present the information and then receive public comment on the 2018 budget. So tonight in the presentation, we're going to discuss some historical statistics, the levy, tax rate, tax capacity, and our budget. So the proposed tax levy, certified levy in 2016 is $6.1 million. The certified preliminary levy that was completed in September of this year is a $6.4 million. That is a $307,000 change or a 5% change. The tax base did grow from 2016 to 2017, and that grew by approximately 1.3%. The request is to have a tax rate increase of 3.7, which comes out to a 5% overall increase. So the City of Marshall tax capacity is, historical tax extension is, the tax capacity has increased $145,000 from 2017 to 2018. That is approximately 1.2%. Okay, sorry. As I say, yes, my slides are switched around a little bit, but
highlight critical items for the levy in the budget. So you might have to go off of the screen.
yes. So we're going to pay attention to this. So the extension rate then with this levy increase is from 54.051 to 55.945. Go ahead. Okay, so then the tax capacity, this shows the tax capacity from 2009 to 2018. The orange is indicating our TIF tax capacity, and that's the tax capacity in the community that is directly related to our TIF projects and is funding those significant projects, and that is not money that goes into the general fund. So the purple is the tax capacity that goes into or is related to determining our actual tax levy. So then we have historical tax capacity from 2008 to 2018. Here is a $145,000 increase from 2017 to 2018. Comparative data over the years, this is for Greater Minnesota. With, on the left, you can see that is the population, and we fall in there. So when you look at that, we are very in line. So the bottom portion is City of Marshall from 2012 going up to 2016. That is from the League of Minnesota, and that's the latest information they have. So that does not reflect 2017.
Just a comment, we don't have 2017 tax rate information because the Department of Revenue is converting to a new tax software. And so we hope to get 2017 data, but they are waiting for the metro counties to submit their tax rate info. That's why you just see 2016 here. And if the council is interested, I have a spreadsheet with all the cities in the state of Minnesota where you can look at every community's tax rate. If you'd like to see that, we can email that out.
Thank you.
Okay. So how does the levy and budget affect how much I pay for property taxes? So next we've put together some scenarios of both homesteads and commercial. I'll explain the first one for you, and that is the same concept through all. It goes back from pay of 2008. And so from 2017, currently a $100,000 home on average is paying $388 a year. And pay 2018 would be $402 a year. That is an increase of $14 from 2017 to 2018 a year. That is based on the 5% levy requested. I've also included a $200,000 homestead and a $300,000, and they're all relative at the same increase. So then in a commercial, $150,000 commercial value currently is a $1,216, would be increasing to $1,259, which is $43 a year. We also included $500,000 commercial property, as well as a $3 million commercial property. So general revenues for fiscal year 2018 are estimated at $12.1 million. 42% of that is in property and franchise taxes. The intergovernmental revenues is your 26%. Those are the two largest percentages where revenues come to operate the city. The next slide then breaks that graph out for you into all the different areas of the taxes, intergovernmental, and shows you that matches the same numbers. So then we have the next graph, which is property taxes. So the general fund is 71% of our property tax levy dollars. That's where it goes. The next largest is to our debt service at 18%. And that is based on the $6.4 million tax levy. The next slide breaks it out into all the different fund descriptions that you previously saw on that pie chart. Then we have the general fund fiscal year 2018 expenditures. It's at $12.2 million, with 28% being at Public Works, 30% being at Public Safety, and 27% the general government, and 15% in Culture and Recreation. The next two slides shows those broke out into the departments. And if we go to the next slide, that 12.2 million is a moving number. As you can see, this is a draft from November 7th. Since then, staff have continued to work on that, and to date we have cut another $155,000 approximately from the expenses, and we continue to work on that as well. So bringing that percentage down and that increase down. So we'll continue. Economic development, the revenues from 17 to 18 have increased slightly, as have the expenses. Our enterprise funds, there you see the 2018 revenues and expenses as of budgeted as of November 7th as well. We will continue to look at those and make sure that we have all the projects in place, and for the liquor store, the bond payments addressed. So we'll continue to work on that as well.
Okay, thank you, Carla. We'll now open it up as part of the public hearing. If there's any member of the audience here that wishes to speak as part of the public hearing, we'll take your input. Lyle? And I'll need you to come up and use the microphone, and then if you want to speak. Yes, yes, you are. Yes. So Lyle, as you're coming up, yes, if this is the right meeting, and you're representing the Marshall Cemetery,
yes.
Right? So if the question's on valuation, we can't talk about that at this meeting. But if the question's on taxes, then
we can't talk about it. So I'm okay with that.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
I'll start out, and you tell me I'm at the wrong meeting again, and I can agree with that. The reason I'm here is because of the Marshall Cemetery's taxation. We pay 93% of our income for taxes and assessments. People say we don't. We do. I'm sorry, I didn't make so much for everybody. So if you guys could share.
Doc and I will share.
Yeah, we can share.
Right, I'll share with the attorney.
I'm sharing with them.
Yeah.
You're good.
I don't know many of that land.
In 2012, we were informed for the first time that we're going to be put on taxation. We've never paid taxes. We've always paid the assessments, but we've never paid taxes. Lorna Sandvik, seeing that we had corn, and under Minnesota state law, if you are making a profit, they can tax us. No problem. We'd like to pay taxes. They valued our land according to our neighbors. So we take in, if you'll go to the page 2, we take in $4,420. We charge $200 an acre for this. We have 2 pieces of land, 15 acres up above and 6 acres down below. So roughly 22 acres. We get $4,200. And if you can see from our assessments up above, we pay, last year we paid $4,108. This year we paid $4,130. And we keep paying 93% of everything we take in for farming to taxes and assessments. And all they say is, there's nothing we can do about it. Take it to legislature. Okay, I've written the state, I've called the state, and the state actually wrote a bill for us. But our state representative, Chris Zazinski, met with us, talked to us, and said he'd see, and we never heard from him again. We called Gary Doms. He wants nothing to do with helping us out. You know, it would affect every, we don't know what. He didn't really give us a reason, but he wouldn't help us out at all. So we're not saying we shouldn't pay taxes. Or taxes for farmland. Don't say because you're farming it, we're going to tax you according to apartments across the street. What you could sell for it. They tell us we could sell for $1 million. We've owned the property since 1897. Lake Marshall Township started burying people in 1871. In 1897, they wanted to get rid of the burden of burying, so they gave us 40 acres. We believe they gave us 40 acres so that we could rent it out and have operating funds. And that's what, because most cemeteries are 1 to 5 acres. They never give you 40 acres. They gave us 40 acres. And then in 1937, we had an opportunity to buy 9 more acres, which we did to the south. And in 1945, okay, cemeteries and their land have never been taxed. And of course, there's always an abuse. In 1945, State versus Richell, the state ruled that they can tax us if we're making a profit. What was happening was a trucking firm was parking on their property, and they were making money and not paying taxes, any of it. So anyway, it went all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and they said that you can start taxing cemeteries for their extra land. And we have no intention of selling our land. I told Lorna, I said, we will pass an amendment saying we can't sell for anything other than cemetery use. She said, sure, and you could change that next week. All we want is people to work with us. We're not saying we shouldn't pay taxes, but 93, you can see on there, it's 93% is what we pay. We've always paid over 90%, and we can't get anybody to listen to us. Every meeting I come to, they say, you're at the wrong meeting. So this is, I get excited over this, by the way. So.
Just a little bit more that I can add if I could, Lyle.
Sure.
I mean, because we've been talking about this for years,
Yes.
and I think we're all, kind of sympathetic to what the issue that the association has, and then also the issue is the assessor's department is following state law, and because you're an association, correct me if I'm misstating this, you're not eligible for green acres,
Correct.
which would bring that valuation down to what it would be for agricultural purposes. So then, following the state statute, the assessor has to look at the highest and best use of the neighborhood, which is not renting it out for corn and soybeans. So that's kind of the issue that we get in, and you're absolutely correct. The cleanest correction would be if there would that bill that was drafted, if that would be passed by the legislature,
Well,
that would resolve everything right there. So
it hasn't got passed.
right, it hasn't been introduced either.
But we're
so.
just trying to deal with it locally. I mean, we need help. Nobody pays 93% of all the money they take in for taxes and assessments. Nobody should.
Right. So they're paying taxes on number 1 and number 2, but the burial ground as well as the grass in front, that's not.
Well, okay, in all fairness, well, I don't know how much we should tell you, but she was taxing us for the alfalfa field in front. There's a little...
I think we got that off.
To drive in this white part?
Yep.
We've always maintained that could not be farmed. I mean, because we don't want people driving through a cornfield to get to the cemetery. And she actually had us on that for a long time. We finally convinced her to take it off, which is great. She took us off, thank goodness, last year. And our taxes went from 41 to 39.99. Great, we got it lowered. They actually went down $700. We got special assessments of $730, so our taxes went back up. The assessments went back up. We paid more money. If we hadn't gotten rid of that alfalfa field in front, we'd have paid about 110 or 115% of the money we take in.
David, do you have a question?
I do, and not for Mr. Mosing. I remember our conversation about this a couple of years ago, Lyle, and I'm glad you're bringing it back to us. So I'll direct a question to Dennis. Do we have some latitude as a city, and perhaps you could do some applied research and maybe bring it, let me finish my thought, please, to the L&O committee to divide the parcel in such a way that the active cemetery section is a separate parcel and can be taxed on a different basis than the area that is open for agriculture? Is there a way to do that?
Well, that is being done right now.
Well, the alfalfa, what about the area to the north? The green area on your aerial photo. They're certainly paying the higher tax rate for that area, even though it's not active cemetery use.
They're being taxed on parcel 1 and parcel 2.
Yeah,
Parcel
we're,
one's to the north.
we're being taxed on the 15 acres and the 6 acres.
Okay,
Six.
in the interest of your time and the rest of it, Dennis, could we talk about this and look at some things we might be able to research on this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Lyle. Paul, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or?
No, I'm going to happen to be the president of the association, and the only thing
You're going to regret this.
Anybody that knows me knows if I'm asked to say something, I'm going to talk for a while. But the one thing I did want to stress, and it's simply a fact of life, the circumstances we're in is a catch-22. If we continue to pay taxes, we maybe pocket a couple $100 a year. If we decide we're not going to crop it anymore and put all the grass, maintain it in grass, it's no longer cropland, the taxes go away and our costs go up because now we have to maintain it every year. We also have to spend several $1,000s to put it into grass. So the irony of it is with this current situation, we have to keep farming it in order to pay you guys taxes because we don't get much out of it. In fact, we get very little. I mean, in terms of building for the future and our income, it just isn't there. We're basically treading water. And eventually, if we can't maintain a healthy financial structure and we go under, I believe it becomes the responsibility of either the county or the city to take care of it. And I guarantee you, and I worked for the federal government for 30, 40 years and I'm very proud of that, there's no way that a government entity can do it for the cost we're doing because we're doing so much of it for free as far as maintaining work and stuff. That's all. We're up against a wall. And
Yeah,
we take whatever help we can get.
We certainly appreciate that. I think following up with our legal department as best we can. The only other thing I would add is, they do have the crematorium there, and you are paying taxes on that. So,
yeah, and we're not arguing.
You're right.
It's just that it's the tax rate per acre on that crop land.
Exactly. Yep.
That's the problem.
Do you guys have water at that site? I mean, is there?
We just put it in ourselves about 2 years ago.
Aren't we short a city garden site, Scott? Maybe take one of those parcels and put it into gardens and rent the garden spots out. I don't know what you guys get for garden spots, but
If we rent it out, you're going to tax us again.
yeah, but maybe we can get you more than $200 an acre for part of the parcel to do garden spots. I'm just throwing it out there before until we can fix the taxes.
More than market cropland rates. I mean, right now.
Right, and that's all. That's the only reason why I'm throwing it out. I know that there's a lot of people crying for garden spots, and I'm just saying I don't know if one parcel would work until we can fix the tax piece and get that thing done. Maybe there's another use for it.
For the benefit of those that haven't been involved in it, if we quit farming it, we don't have to pay taxes.
Right.
If we quit farming it, we have to maintain it. So
Yep.
we'll be owning
Yep.
20-some acres, and we will still be paying all of the assessments and all the levies.
And how long do these assessments go? These are ditch assessments for 60B and 62.
This particular one, the two that they just added last year.
Is this repair or maintenance on those two ditches?
We don't know exactly what it's for.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be.
For sure 1 year or two.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All we're saying is charge us farm taxes.
Right.
Mr. Molson, would there be any advantage to putting it into CRP or CREP?
We can't qualify.
Why?
They're an association.
Not farmers.
They're not farmers per se. That's not our primary, we've tried, we've looked at that,
Yep.
and we can't do it. We don't
Jacked
qualify.
up mess.
See, if we did that, we'd still be getting an income and they're still taxing us.
Well, you guys are
Getting an income, they're going to tax us.
a
That was
mess.
the argument from the assessor's office at the time.
Sure.
The past assessors never bothered us. They just said, we don't make enough money on that.
One of us must have got on their case, huh?
We won't get in on that.
The way we eliminated the 2 areas in the front that had been in alfalfa
Mhm.
is we simply wrote a contract with the man who's farming the rest of it, where we pay him $200 a year to come in and maintain it, rather than him paying
Sure.
$200 a year for the hay. Otherwise, nothing changed.
Got it.
Officially, we were no longer making a profit.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Lyle. You know, we know the issue.
Yeah. No, it's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Other input as part of the public hearing on the proposed levy and budget for 2018?
Oh, I was looking at my proposed tax statement, and I noticed that according to the proposed tax statement, my county taxes would go up 11.5%, my city taxes would go up 11.7%, and my school district taxes would go up about 9%. That's certainly higher than the rate of inflation, which I think right now is right around 2.2%.
Glenn, can I interrupt you? Did your valuation change?
It did, but and I know that argument, but then it doesn't necessarily. If you increase the value of all the properties because the values of property go up, and you collect the same amount of revenue, then the levy rate should go down, so that your total tax bill should stay the same. And you're right. I mean, my values did go up, but if I don't sell it, the value increase doesn't help me. And what I'm just trying to point out is that my taxes are going up. I've got the same house, the same building, and my taxes are going up. And so that's the point I'm trying to make. And
I can up you. Mine went up 62% last year, so.
and I appreciate the PowerPoint presentation. I was wondering, would it be useful in the future maybe to have something where we have a comparison with peer groups as far as I'm always interested in, and I know colleges sometimes do this, private colleges. They'll say we spend a certain amount on student services, and this compares to a certain percent that other colleges spend on student services. So you get an idea as are we over budgeting in some areas and under budgeting in other areas. So I know our auditors prepare some peer review information, and I'm just wondering if that would be something that would be useful. When you do the pie graphs, instead of the pie graphs, put down percentages, and then compare that to comparable cities like Hutchinson, New Ulm, Worthington, and so forth. And then we can see, are we somewhat the same as other cities as far as how we spend our dollars, or do we spend it disproportionately in certain areas? I think that would be useful if we could look at that maybe in the future. Thank you.
Any other input as part of the public hearing? Steve and then David.
On that line that the Councilmember Bearcoller had, I look at the comparative data on the PowerPoint, and you see that Greater Minnesota size 10,000 to 25,000. The comparison is towns that are all 1 to 2 or 2 to 3,000 people bigger than us, and their taxes are fairly close to ours, but they're 2 to 3,000 people more than us. So it'd be nice to see towns that are as close as possible the same size as Marshall. I think that would be a more fair representative, because you look at the 2016, they don't say the cities in there, but the average population is 15,000. The city net levy is 6 million. We're at 5,654,000. So that sounds really good. But again, what if the average population was 12,000 or 13,000, which is more in line with Marshall? So.
One last point. In the revenue chart, it shows current ad valorem taxes, and it shows between the 2017 and 2018 budget a 22.63% increase. And I think people, when they look at that, if they don't know what the breakdown is of the numbers, that seems like a huge increase in taxes in 1 year.
So the detail behind that, you want to address that, but the detail behind that is important too. So that's not exactly 20, you know.
So the detail behind the general levy is that this year, for 2018, we have combined the library levy, which used to be separate levy line item, into our general, and therefore then they can get a monthly appropriation. Otherwise, the city was carrying their debt, paying their bills, and carrying their debt and expenses until their tax levy came in.
Right.
So this way, so that's why it's looking, so it's a little over $600,000 just in the library levy portion. Right. And so that's what you're seeing. Such a large increase. It's not an overall increase that much,
right.
But that's what's increasing the main.
And that's why I wanted you to kind of explain
yes.
it, because when people look at just this and see a 22.63% increase, that's alarming to people. And sometimes maybe like a footnote at the bottom or something explaining what happened there would help. Otherwise, you know, they can jump to the wrong conclusion here as far as what's going on. So.
Correct.
Good point. David?
Carla, as long as you're here, just a clarification. I think I understand it, but I'll just ask for reference. I'm looking at the pie chart on page 16, which is the general revenue, fund revenues, and 17, the companion table. On the big green 42% wedge, property and franchise taxes, and looking at page 17 with the table. Do I see this right, that the ad valorem tax is 3.7, for 2018. The ad valorem tax is $4,610,000, lodging tax $160,000, franchise tax $318,000. That's what the language on the pie chart refers to. It says property and franchise taxes. That's corresponding to those three line items. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right.
So Sharon, she's back at 16.
Right there.
There you go.
So it's about 90% of that big green portion is the ad valorem property tax, more or less.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, that'll do. Thank you.
Any other input from the council? Jim?
I do. As I was looking at this, it's on lines with UCLA. Is the cost of living and inflation has not gone up 5%, yet we are raising our property tax levy 5%. I lost the page here. Growth was 1.299, which tells me growth is, I don't want to say stagnant, but it's growing very slowly in Marshall. And as we approach this, you know, are we increasing? Because wages have been flat. I read Council, I read the Wall Street Journal every day. Wages for the working guy have been flat for 10 years. They're not increasing. I mean, that's very common that they're not increasing. So we keep increasing ours at a greater rate than what our citizens are increasing their pay. And I just don't think that's fair to our citizens. I understand value is going up. I get that. The value in my home did not go up. I live on the wrong sides of the tracks. But yet my taxes are still going up greater than the rate of inflation. And I said all along when I ran, I don't want to see our levies increase higher than the inflation rate or even be below that, because that is what is affecting our citizens here at Marshall. That's what we should be working on.
There'll come a time when people can't afford to live here.
And you say that, I look at my employees. 4 of my 6 employees do not live in Marshall. They say it's too expensive. So, and I would like to get more people in Marshall.
Other input as part of the public hearing? If not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Oh, excuse me. You haven't even voted yet. I was looking at the wrong screen. Sorry about that.
Mayor voted.
Motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 15. Agenda item number 15, consider the approval of the purchase of the electronic poll books for use during elections. With us tonight is our HR Director and former Interim City Administrator Sheila Dubs. Sheila?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I did have E.J. Moberg, the Auditor and Treasurer from Lyon County, here this evening to assist me to answer questions on this because I've been working very closely with his department on this, but unfortunately he wasn't able to stay this late. So I will do my best to answer any questions that you might have. During the last several months, Lyon County has invited all of the cities and townships within its jurisdiction to be in attendance for election equipment demonstrations by vendors for state-approved equipment. Those demonstrations included ballot counters, electronic poll books, which are utilized for voter check-ins and registrations, and assistive voting equipment, which is most often used by voters with disabilities. The existing equipment owned by the city and across all of the Lyon County jurisdictions has aged to a point where replacement is necessary. The city's current equipment was purchased over 15 years ago in April of 2002. According to E.J. Moberg, some of the equipment has had issues, including failure during testing and or during the elections. In 2017, the state legislature approved funding for a $7 million grant program through the Secretary of State's Office for Election Equipment and e-poll books to help offset the costs for local jurisdictions. Part of the requirement for Minnesota counties to receive that grant funding is that each county needs to submit an application for funding. Lyon County will be submitting an application for that in December, which is why I'm here tonight. And then part of that application is also to identify the equipment intended to be purchased. Each county in Minnesota will receive a designated amount of grant funds per precinct if they apply. Lyon County will receive $56,067 in total grant funds for its 33 precincts. The grant funds will be awarded in February of 2018. And while those are available now, they can only be claimed one time, meaning a county can't purchase some items now and then additional items or equipment to be added later and reimbursed more than once. So this is a one-time opportunity for us. Lyon County will purchase the ballot counters for all of the local jurisdictions, according to EJ. Now, they've not taken formal action on that, but that is EJ's recommendation that will be going to the county. They have already levied $37,500 for the election equipment in 2017, and they are budgeting another $37,500 for their 2018 budget. I am here tonight requesting council's consideration to authorize the purchase of poll books for the city. We are estimating a maximum of 15 e-poll books would be needed. We would purchase these through Lyon County, 5 devices for each of our 3 polling locations. The county would own the e-poll books, and the city would reimburse Lyon County for the devices and annual maintenance. Lyon County would store them for us as they do our election equipment. They would ensure the annual maintenance is completed. They do that for us now on the other election equipment. They would prepare them for election day, and they would assist us with providing training to both city staff and our election judges prior to each election. For those of you that may not be familiar with the e-poll book devices, they are either tablets or iPads that replace the current paper voter registration processes. So e-poll books can both speed up the process and assist the election judges with each step in the process, including the new registrations. The devices allow a voter to check in and register seamlessly. They reduce our election judges' error, and they maintain more voter privacy. I'll give you a for instance on that. Sometimes there is a voter that comes in that may have a new address or may have a change in their status, say they have a new married name, or maybe they have a felony. There are certain questions that an election judge has to ask them in order for them to be eligible to vote. And with these poll pads, that can now be done more privately, securing the voters' interest so that the people behind them or on the sides of them don't have to hear their answers or hear the election judge's questions. With the grant funds available from the state of Minnesota at this time, the cost to the city for the e-poll books is significantly reduced. If we do not approve the purchase of e-poll books at this time, the grant funds to offset that cost may not be available in the future. We do estimate based on the estimates that EJ has been provided by, there's 2 companies that provide this equipment. The local cost of the e-poll books and associated software and hardware will be approximately $13,000. That's City of Marshall cost with the grant funding. Without the grant funding, it's estimated that the cost would be approximately $25,000. The 2018 proposed general fund budget currently includes $15,000 for the purchase of election equipment. And if you approve it this evening, Lyon County would purchase the devices in early 2018 and then initiate the training and preparation of our election judges and the device preparation to have them ready by our August primary. The cities of Ballatin and Tracy have notified the auditor treasurer of their authorization. They have received authorization from their boards to proceed with the purchase of e-poll books. The staff from the cities of Cottonwood and Minneota have expressed interest, but their boards have not yet approved. In some cases, they haven't had a meeting yet, so we don't know whether they will be purchasing or not. I've had 2 demonstrations. Kyle and Jane have also looked at the demonstrations of one of the poll pads. Unfortunately, they weren't able to be there for the second poll pad, but I did put a link in your background materials to one of them. So hopefully you got a chance to go out and look at what they look like. I can certainly answer any questions that you might have.
Not really. I appreciated the information from the demonstration that EJ gave and then your follow-up information. It does seem odd. I was trying to do a quick calculation in my head. There's no bearing on our decision, just an observation that these machines have been used for about 7 election cycles and are now at a point of diminished effectiveness, have to be replaced. It seems like we were spending about $1 per processed ballot over the lifespan of those machines, roughly. And I sure hope this new generation of device gives us a better return on that dollar. But we'll see. But I do support the motion here, yes.
Could we separate the two? We got the ballot counters from the poll books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the ballot counters, the county's going to buy no matter what.
That is the indication that EJ has provided to me. Now, the county has not taken action on that yet, but that will be his recommendation, and apparently he's received some level of commitment from them to do that.
And the ballot counters we have now, who owns those? Or
The city purchased them, but the county maintains them, and they support the repairs to them, but we do pay for the annual maintenance on those.
Okay, so we own them.
We own the counters, yep.
But we're going to replace them, the county's going to replace them with new ones?
Yes, those do have to be replaced.
Okay. With regard to the e-poll books, so we're going to spend $15,000 for these, correct?
The request is up to $15,000. We have 2 different companies that we are currently working with. We are still waiting for a quote from one of them called ES&S. We do have a quote from No Inc. Today. That quote looks like it will be about $13,000, but EJ wasn't certain. It's based on the number of poll pads purchased. So if we combine as a county unit, so if Minneota, if Ballatin, if all of the smaller communities also go in, it could reduce the overall costs of the individual poll pads for us. So,
with the poll books, we pay for them, but the county owns them?
That is how we would essentially, yes.
Is it normal that we...
Here's why. The county did not want to force the use of e-poll books on any particular community. We have several communities, Lake Marshall townships. We have several townships that do mail ballots. There's several communities that have a smaller number of voters that are not interested in using the poll books. So EJ indicated that the county would fund the purchase of the ballot counters, which is what you put your ballot in when you
Right.
want it counted at the end of your voting process. But they wanted communities to buy into the process, because otherwise we would actually be having a local share on the ballot counters. So now he said individual communities, if they want to invest in these electronic poll books, that would be our cost, but he was willing to earmark portions of the grant funding towards that to assist us in bringing down the total price of that.
Do we know what the useful life is of these poll books?
Approximately 8 years.
And then Sheila, would you once again go over the potential grant from the
Yes.
state, and then how that
So-
would impact the total cost?
Lyon County will be receiving a total of $56,067, and to distribute that amongst the 33 precincts within Lyon County. The Lyon County will be levying $37,500 this year, $37,500 next year, towards the purchase of all of the ballot counters that are needed for all of the jurisdictions. So they're going to utilize a portion of that $56,000 towards the ballot counters, and then a portion of that equipment will be towards the assistive technology that we also need because our current M100s are also failing. And then the other portion of the grant funding he is setting aside to help the individual communities pay for these poll pads.
And that'll be impacted by the number of communities that participate.
It does. It is the hope that these poll pads will eventually be able to reduce the number of workers, the election judges, that we actually need to employ. One of the websites for a product, these have been in existence for quite some time, and so they've shown a history with a community on their website in the reduction of poll workers that they've needed over time as people become more accustomed to the poll pads.
Mayor, if it's in order, I'll move approval of the purchase of the electronic poll books as presented here.
Motion by David, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Steve?
So I'm all about technology, but I have got some concerns about e-poll pads and the way we do things now. Minnesota, as I understand, does not allow them to be connected to any networks. So when you look at scanning stuff, I mean, your example, Sheila, of telling if somebody's got a felony, if it's not connected, how is it going to tell that?
It will be, and Kyle maybe can help me a little bit with the technology language if I'm straying a little bit.
I mean,
My understanding is the county will receive a file that will be uploaded into the devices. So all of that information will be there. And one of the poll pads actually connects to the iCloud, and the other poll pad connects to a server, a web-based server.
How does that,
That information is there. It is so we do have that accurate information. So with one of the devices, we can actually take your driver's license, swipe it, and everything's imported right there. We know who you are, where you live, your voter information, all just from your Minnesota
There's a
driver's
black
from your magnetic strip on your
on the back.
Right, but when I'm looking at this website called National Conference of State Legislatures, and it says the states that have them, it says what can these things do for you? It says allows poll workers to look up voters for the entire county or state. If things are uploaded, that'd be great, and this can reduce time spent in checking. Allows poll workers to easily redirect if you're in the wrong spot. Okay, great. Scans the license to pull up a voter's information, avoiding data entry errors. That, again, it says down at the very bottom here, it says e-poll books in some states are networked and receive immediate updates on who has voted in other voting centers. Other states, Minnesota and Michigan, for example, specify that e-poll books may not be connected to a network. So if it's on a server, it's on a network, and apparently our state doesn't allow that. Right, wrong, or indifferent, because then you can get hacked. And if you get hacked, how do you prevent the hacking? So when you say you pull it up, that's my question, technology. How is it being pulled up? You scan a license, and that can import things. But how does it compare,
They receive a file from Lyon County in advance of the election.
The day before. Okay. The county will send that company, the company that we choose, if approved, the information that the county has is basically a file. They'll put all that information onto a network, their own network, send it to these, or to the county, and then they'll send it out to each and every poll book at every location. So we would have to purchase routers, a data plan. These are part of the yearly, or in that initial cost. I mean, that's
why it's
Right.
$1,000, because it seems like a ridiculously
Right.
expensive iPad.
Now, Hennepin County just went with one of these devices for their entire county. So all of their cities within there are using
And there's only
full
2
pads
companies that make them,
that are approved in Minnesota.
and you have to get them that are state approved.
Yes.
Other questions?
I do, just out of curiosity, because you can swipe a driver's license, but you do not need a driver's license to vote in
You
Minnesota.
do not.
No.
All you need is
Nope.
utility bill.
And we can data enter the change. If it's an address change, for instance, we can data enter the change right on the pad.
And then you
So-
say Lyon County uploads it. Another question, let's say I just moved in from South Dakota. Now I have a permanent address, or a college student. How does that upload? I mean,
That could be a new registration.
that'd be a new
Yep,
voter
which we could also
registration.
handle on the poll.
So the
pad.
only thing Lyon County uploads is the current voter registration of Lyon County.
It's newest information from the day prior to the election.
So if someone does a registration at the courthouse or at the prior, that would be there. But
It-
same-day registration would still be same-day registration. Other discussion on the motion?
Without the grant funding, it's 25,000.
That is our best estimate today. We have the state pricing, and so that's what those numbers are based off of, what the state pricing has given us for the 2 devices.
So in the future, it could be 25,000 every time we buy new ones. Because we're not assured of a grant every time we buy them.
Right, and I don't know what will happen to the costs in the future.
And when we talk about an 8-year lifespan, I mean, that's 8 annual years. So maybe like 4 elections or something. If you have elections, let's say every 2 years, at least for city council here. I mean, it's every 2 years.
Right.
So that's 4 elections.
We would also use them for the primaries as well as the general elections.
Otherwise, I was saying it's like 25,000 for 4 elections. That's $6,000 an election just to use these devices. That you could hire a lot of poll workers for
Right.
that amount of money.
And I'll be honest with you, getting people to want to be a poll worker is getting more difficult. It's long days, and it's
Right.
uncomfortable questions sometimes
Okay.
to the people coming to vote, and people coming to vote aren't always happy. So some of our poll workers are reducing in numbers. They simply don't want to do it anymore.
Because in the past, I thought there was a waiting list for people to become poll watchers, because it's
There
not.
is not.
Okay.
Nope. We would love to recruit new members.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not, we'll move to a vote on the motion. Motion passes. Agenda item number 16. Agenda item number 16, consider approval of the 2018 partnership agreement with Marshall Municipal Utilities. Sheila, you have this. Also, Brad Rose is here.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Brad Rose, for being here tonight. He will assist me with any questions on this one as well. This is an agreement that is brought to the council for consideration on an annual basis. The joint committee met on November 7th and reviewed this document in detail and unanimously recommended approval. This partnership agreement does address several topics. Those are listed on the first page of your attachments, starting with payment in lieu of taxes, street lighting, fire protection, all the way down through chloride reduction coordination and GIS coordination. It's noted also on that cover sheet where there are no changes and where there are modified agreements or modified attachments. If there's questions on any particular one of those, then I would ask Brad Rose to come up and assist me in answering.
Maybe I'll just make an additional comment on this. This is a process that has been used for a number of years to really bring all of the agreements into one document, whether it's street lighting, whether it's readiness to serve fire protection, or whether it's payment in lieu of taxes for the electricity that's sold in the city. You've seen the formula that is used for the payment in lieu of taxes on electricity that's sold in the city, and that is based on a multiple year average. So if there would be a dramatic change in 1 year, either up or down, that would, for our budget purposes, that's somewhat leveled off. So other than that, if there's any questions, I'm sure Sheila or Brad could address those. Questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the partnership agreement.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Brad, and your commission for the work and working with the city for the betterment of the city. Agenda item number 17. Item number 17 is consider the ATM letter of understanding and agreement. With us tonight is Scott Vandermillen, Community Services Director. And Scott, you will be presenting this agreement, which in the proposed budget had a substantial cost to it. Now it doesn't. So go ahead.
That's correct. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is an agreement with Automated Banking Machines Incorporated. This company was recommended to me from U.S. Bank here in town. They've done business with them. They come highly recommended for our situation in terms of providing an ATM machine for our patrons at the Red Baron Arena. The agreement, as you can see, is for 1 year. There is no cost to us for the machine, the installation, or the maintenance of the machine. The only cost to the city would be the insurance of the machine, which is about $5 per year. So with that, I would answer any questions that you may have.
Well, first off, thank you, Scott, for your work on this. Questions for Scott?
Scott, the cost would be the insurance $5 plus the dedicated circuit.
Yes, the dedicated phone line, correct, yes.
I have a question. It says this agreement could end that if they're not making money, they can pull this machine out.
They can notify us to renegotiate the agreement, I believe is the language in the agreement.
What is what your history on this? What history do you have on them doing this? I mean, what is the chance of that happening? Coming back in a few months and saying we need to charge you guys $400 a month.
I didn't check with the history on that. Basically, it's spelled out pretty clear in the agreement that if they're at a loss after 3 months, that they'll contact us for renegotiation terms.
So that is a potential possible.
Certainly could, yes.
One of the, along that same line is that it talks about operating at a loss. So what type of expenses can they allocate to determine the loss? Because, I mean, you got overhead costs and direct costs and so forth. And do we have any idea what kind of costs get allocated to the machines? So you could, I mean, if you're going to determine whether you have a profit or loss, you need to know how the expenses are allocated.
Yeah, their profit is targeted or based upon surcharges and number of transactions.
So those are the costs that we're talking about.
Correct.
So it's pretty easy to pin those down.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Not. Thank you, Scott. I'd entertain a motion.
I so move.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? Not. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 18.
Scott, thanks for your work on this. I know we were looking at $6,500 to do our own, and this looks like a way better deal.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 18 is consider the Senior Citizens Commission yearly contract with both Marshall Area Senior Commission, Inc., Senior Citizens, Inc., as well as LSS, Lutheran Social Service, for the senior dining permits. With us tonight is Barb Lipinski. Thank you, Barb, for your patience in waiting for this agenda item. Let me first ask, this is an annual agreement. Are there any questions that council members want in particular to address? If not, I would entertain a motion then.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion. Now, Barb, you can add anything you want to add.
Okay, I would just add in that with the MASC, it's been a contract that's been working well with them. And what I did this year is I went back from the time that the building was in place, and I looked at the big items that the seniors raised the money and put into the building for the city, and that was $47,658.83. Not including the $4,635 they just recently put in for door openers on the bathrooms. In comparison, the city also put into the building in that same time period was $90,810.87. So they're definitely, we felt that they were definitely doing their part. So that's why the commission recommended to approve that as is. And then we also took a look at the LSS agreement, and with that we sent it over to Dennis Simpson's office. We felt there was a couple areas that really needed to be looked at, and that was line item number 5. It had in there that they had to carry liability insurance, but there was no dollar amount. So we had him look at that and make a recommendation, and that was at $500,000, and so that has been put in there. And then line item number 10 was added in case either party would want to terminate the agreement and how that could be done. And so that's the changes in that agreement.
Any other discussion on the motion? Glenn?
I just looked at your minutes, and I was talking about the number of lunches dropping and then concerns about quality of food and so forth. So do you feel like that issue has been resolved satisfactorily?
Well, I think that's an issue that's always ongoing and discussion that we continue to have with them. For the understanding of the City Council, this agreement is given by the Area Agency on Aging, and it's a 3 to 5 year contract, and they're currently in a 5-year contract with a couple more years to go. So we have had conversations with the AAA in addressing those issues. We have seen improvements in the last few months.
Okay.
So.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 19. Agenda item number 19, consider the authorization to enter into the agreement with Bolton and Mink for the wastewater design and bidding services for the wastewater treatment facility upgrade. We'll start Glenn, and also Bob Van Moore is also here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bob Van Moore is here from the wastewater department. We've been working on this for some time. You've already been given the presentation on these improvements, and this is the proposed contract that we have. So go ahead, Bob.
I guess, yeah, everything is in your packet there. We've been working on it for quite a while. It comes us off of our facility plan of needs that we have. We've looked at some major upgrades in the past, and it's getting to the point. The large portion of the stuff that is going to be rehabbed here are 25 years old. Some of it goes back to the original plant of 42 years old. So it's definitely a need. We're getting to the critical stage on a lot of this equipment. So I think it's necessary that we get in and get this thing designed. We are eligible for some low interest funding from the state on this project. So just looking at looking at the overall cost to users, Bolton and Minka did the study and the facility plan. By the time we start paying the bonds down on this project, we'll be retiring some other bonds, so it's pretty much a wash, or probably a little less expensive than we've been operating at currently. So it's going to be a very good project. I guess I can answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Questions, Craig?
What's the interest rate that we're getting from the Public Facilities Authority?
Pardon me?
What's the interest rate on the low interest loan?
It'll either be 1.5% or 2.5%. We won't know that until we apply for it.
Now, that doesn't come with a, excuse me, with a number of, like, used to be way back in the day on some of the grants programs, you didn't want to get the grant because the grant cost you money. On the loan program, they're not, I mean, that's not a factor anymore. We get to basically build what we need. We don't have to put their buzzers and bells. We just have to meet the minimums, right?
Yep. It's cleaned up a lot.
Good.
And some of the time, the paperwork was just horrendous on some of this low interest loan stuff, but they've cleaned that up pretty good. And we have the option of looking at our own financing if we feel it's better. So.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good interest.
Yep.
Any other question for Bob? Not, you have the request before you.
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Craig, second by David. Bob, stay up here for a second. Discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. As long as you're here, Bob, the land application of the sludge, which has gone extraordinarily well and very impressive technology. You want to just give a very brief update on that?
Sure, yeah. We really appreciate you guys helping us out. We purchased that dragline equipment this fall here. First time we had the opportunity to dragline the biosolids for sludge application ourselves. We did about 3 million gallons in about 6 days. That normally would take us about 3 months.
And how many semi-loads?
Probably 450 semi-loads that we would be trucking down the road otherwise. We're able to pump right out of our tanks at the treatment plant. We have our own 80-acre property, then we have 320 acres of adjacent farmland that we have permission to apply to. So we're sitting on about 1 more million gallons that normally we would hold over and try make room for until next fall when we can apply again. We're waiting for 1 more biosolids analysis result for mercury. Otherwise, Thursday morning we expect to be Thursday and Friday doing that last 1 million gallons. So we'll be coming into December lower than we've ever been for sludge storage, and the process has been flawless, truthfully. We're learning. It's just going to get nothing but better from here. So,
Bob, you don't need to hold that million back so we can grow more.
No. That million is what we generated since August that we were storing our biosolids after we had them tested. We can't add to the tanks. So that's what we had generated in the last 3 months. So
it's all those face getting sold.
I guess.
So thank you, Bob.
All right.
Again, if you're applying this Thursday and Friday, and people have the opportunity to see,
yeah, if you want to come out and
impressive.
look, just give us a holler or whatever. So.
The amount of technology that's
Awesome.
there is
Yep.
very impressive.
And there's no pride with the operation.
No, I think my staff has been fantastic with this. They really stuck their hearts into it, and it shows. So, yep.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess.
Thanks, Bob.
I'd like to keep it fresh.
Okay, I'll reconvene the meeting. We are on agenda item number 20. This is the Brow Brothers Area Storm Sewer Project. We have a change order to consider as well as the acknowledgement of the final pay request with Thompson Excavating. Are there any questions about this? If not, is there a motion to allow?
So move.
Motion by Craig.
Second.
Seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 21. Agenda item number 21, the bituminous overlay on various streets. Again, we have a change order, the final change order to consider, as well as the acknowledgement of the final pay application. So is there any questions about this item? If not, is there a motion?
I so move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 22. Agenda item number 22, Independence Park parking lot project. Again, we have a change order to consider that results in a contract increase in the amount of $3,075. We'll deal with that one first. Questions about that?
I move approval of the first change order.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes, and then the next action would be to consider the final change order with D&G Excavating.
So moved.
Motion by Steve.
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion.
I like seeing a decrease.
I was hoping, I thought Glenn was going to make the motion on this one. I left it for him.
Yeah.
Other discussion on the motion? Well, just one comment. This, as well as the other projects, we could have made the same comment, but this project really did turn out very nice and very nice improvement to that park.
Thank you. It's been a long time. I think it was developed in 78.
No,
98?
it was developed in 1986.
86. Okay.
Father
It
Time
maybe
knows all
started.
these
Yeah,
dates,
that's right. He was here. But yeah, it was a real improvement to get some paving there. We've had a lot of comments of dust and mud and
No more
things
muddy
like that
shoes,
over
yeah.
the years. So, and we do try to keep costs under control. And it's nice to have somebody sitting in Larry's chair that understands the decreases too.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Busy.
That means yes? Oh.
Motion passes. Agenda item number 23. Agenda item number 23 is the East Lion Street, Jean Avenue, East Redwood Street reconstruction project. Once again, we have a change order to consider as well as the acknowledgement of the final pay application. Questions on this?
I'll move approval of the change orders.
Motion by David. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Steve. Discussion?
I have a couple questions. I talked to one of the homeowners today, and he says his issues have not been resolved.
No, they're under the one-year warranty period, and they will be addressed in the spring.
So
11 months after installation, and then the warranty period will suffice for there's one with the cracked driveway, there's one with an offset sidewalk.
And the landscape, because when we were here earlier,
Right.
a lot of the landscaping issues, he
Nails
says
and whatnot.
nothing has been done about the landscaping issues yet.
And that will be done in the spring as well.
So would
No.
we keep the retainage to that point?
No, it's a warranty issue, so we don't keep the retainage.
But the landscaping necessarily isn't a warranty issue because they said it was installed poorly to start with. Isn't that the gist we got when the meeting was here?
Yeah.
They were upset with the landscaping from the way it was finished. And to me, that would be a retainage issue, not a warranty issue. Because if I remember correctly, those homeowners were very upset with the way the landscaping was. And that was this owner's, it was Mr. Schlegel, who it was that I chatted with. His issues that he said has been bad since it was put in. To me, that's a retainage issue, not a warranty issue.
How do they work that, Jim? Do they take the you keep the
Well,
retainage
if they
and
don't
still have
if
to
they don't
fix it?
fix the landscaping, it's not a warranty issue. If a retainage issue, if a contractor does a poor job, you have to have another contractor repair it. That is what the retainage is for. Then the warranty carries on from that point.
The contractor will be repairing the work. It's RNG Construction that is responsible for the work. I would expect that they would be taking care of any construction-related issues, whether under warranty. We certainly won't be hiring another contractor to be doing the work. It'll be done under RNG's contract.
But once you pay them the retainage, what do you hold over them to get them back? Because like I said,
The
retainage
warranty.
issues, but it's not a warranty issue because it was done poorly. According to the homeowners and the ones I've talked to, they said it was done poorly from the start.
It's been done in conformance with the plans and specifications.
They have unlevel landscaping below the level of the curb.
There could be some settlement issues. There could have been rainfall after the work was done and settlement, but then you would add black dirt over that and reseed that area. Now, to be honest with you, both us and MMU have looked into the possibilities of doing our own finished landscaping because of issues that we've had in the past with the landscaping contracts. They're usually subcontracts. They're usually not the prime contracts. And so both MMU and the city are looking, MMU, I believe, already does it themselves in many cases with their improvements. So that's one thing that, when you talk to the property owners, it's really one of the only things they see when you're done. I'll give you the example of Saratoga Street as well. We had some areas that were done well, some areas that were done adequately, and some areas that were not done adequately. Especially, you have a lot of difference between property owners and their expectations. Some people have sodded yards. Some people could care less about the boulevard. Some people could care less about their own yard. But there is a big difference in the expectations of the adjacent property owner on every street project. And that's what I think we're trying to discuss, the best procedures for long-term. It's the only thing they see when they're done.
But ultimately,
Which is why it's so important.
Yeah, but ultimately, the homeowners are paying for this. And if we have homeowners who are not happy yet with the product they got, we should hold, because landscaping could have been fixed this fall yet. Should have been. It's nice out. This is a good time to plant grass and put mulch on it. It comes up nice in the spring.
Our intent was to handle it with the warranty period. However, landscaping and seeding and all of that is time dependent as well. But we want to make sure that, and when we say the property owner is paying for it, they are. They're paying for it in taxes, not necessarily much in specials, because we don't assess them for landscaping. It's included in the general street costs. So they're maybe paying for 20% of it. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be done well.
They're still paying for it.
Right. And sometimes when you get landscaping that you do the seeding work and you don't water it, it doesn't come well.
And that's why it should be done in the fall right away, because it come up in the spring.
It can be done.
And I think we'd encourage you general contractors, just done in the construction trade all the time.
Right.
You hold this retainage because these people aren't happy. Next time they do a job, they're going to make sure their subs do a better job. They can get the money. I'm not saying we will pay RNG. I suggest that we hold this retainage until the project is done, and then we start the warranty from when that landscaping is done.
The important thing here is to identify, too, will we hold the retainage until the property owner approves it? Or will we hold the retainage until the city approves it?
What would each one of us do if it was our yard?
A lot of those yards I would redo it.
We would
I would
not
want it
pay
done right now.
You would not pay the contractor until it was done to your satisfaction if you hired them. And so if it's done in accordance with the plans and specifications, I believe it would be our intent to pay them, but make sure that it got done within the warranty period.
I'm just giving you the information. I'm not trying to argue with you.
No, I understand.
But-
Somebody who's
but
lived
that-
through this,
that's a mess.
it was never fixed in front of my house. And you can go down, there's a lot, and that's what I'm going, is we have these homeowners out here, and we say landscaping is a problem.
Right.
But at some point, we need to say, okay, to the general contractor, okay, it is a problem. We're going to hold this retainage until you fix that. So if they don't come back and fix it, well, then we have the money. So we're not tapping into the tax dollars to do it. It was an issue from the get-go as those citizens were in our galley telling us,
Boulevard is from the home side of the sidewalk to the
Street.
street. So it's the sidewalk and the grass between the sidewalk and the street is the boulevard. That's
it is city's right away, but it's the homeowner, they take care of it. It should be smooth, it should be level.
Yeah, if they don't mow it, if they don't mow the boulevard, we're gonna mow it and put it on. So they have to maintain it, but it's the city's right of way.
Yep.
It reflects on their value of their homes when they sell their homes. And I just don't feel comfortable until these homeowners are happy that we release this retainage. It's not a warranty issue. It was
Your property pin is on the inside of the sidewalk.
It's an issue that the job was not finished correctly.
So there's a motion on the table. Does that motion include holding back retainage for landscaping?
I think it should.
So that's
Yes,
a part of
I
your
would
motion.
accept that as a clarifying amendment.
And you seconded it.
I would absolutely accept that as a.
So Kyle, you have that as the corrected motion?
Nah.
Yes.
So it should be paying except for retainage, right? So it will not be a final payment.
No, it'd be.
No. So the motion has to include that you're just approving the estimate without retainage. So we can pay them for everything but the retainage. Right. So it'd be just another pay request rather than a dash final.
And with that, Glenn, I would suggest, the city staff work with the homeowners to make sure, because it is their properties, their houses, their castle.
Right, yeah, and I know the general contractor's been in that discussion too with some of those.
Yeah, he's been on site several times with the property owners.
I guess what I'm wondering too is, in the future, is this what we're going to be doing then as far as making sure that everything's done properly and before the retained percentage is given to the contractors?
Sure, that would be typical, and in this case, our discussion is going to more be, should we have our contracts finish the project to within 6 inches of the top of the curb, and we do all the black dirt work and hire someone to do the finish work, seeding, everything that's called out for in landscaping. Maybe we either do that as a separate contract at the end, or city does it.
And that's a good point. I just finished a house in Hutchinson. They come in and even put the trees in for you.
Yep.
Not saying that that's how it.
On the rights of ways.
No, they put them in your yard.
Okay.
So they require, that's one.
Trees they require, they put in.
Is that one of their design standards?
I have no idea. We just had trees show up in our yard and it's like, what the heck?
Apparently.
It is. It is. One of the other things, Glenn, too, and I appreciate that conversation about doing the landscape, is I know even on Fifth Street, up between Marshall and Main, when that was done, it always seems to be an issue with the subcontractor and the materials they bring in, more stones than black loam and all those other issues. And I think if the city takes control of that, because they don't go to the contractor, they come to us because we own the project. And I really support the fact that we finish out our boulevard and take responsibility for that. Then we don't have to play the telephone game.
I support that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
As we get into future street projects.
Okay, looks like, Kyle, we have the motion. So any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
I'll get together.
The motion
with you on the
passes.
motion.
Good work, Kyle. So we'll move then to agenda item number 24. The municipal building project, consider the authorization to enter into an agreement with Engen Associates for the architect. This was on our last agenda with the selection of the architect. This is simply the contract then.
Maybe Dennis, do you want to have a comment on, okay. So we're recommending approval with the architect that was the apparent winner of the procedure.
Questions? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by David. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion on that motion?
Question on this is, we haven't approved this yet, which is fine. So the first lump sum is $49,000.
Okay,
And if we,
what they were going to come back to us with is the percentage of that 49,000 that would be due at various portions of that initial phase. So I would not approve a $49,000 upfront lump sum before they start. No. So I certainly would approve it after they were done with phase one, but I wouldn't expect that. I would expect that to, let's say that that portion takes 8 weeks to do. I would divide it by the 8 weeks and say this is what we would pay you.
Well,
I'm sure they'll have stepped billings.
that's fine. The other question I have is, they do this and all suddenly something changes in the economy. Whoops, we can't remodel City Hall. We're not on the hook for the whole 390. We're just, the first lump sum is 49,000.
You can stop and go.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 25. Agenda item number 25, consider the application for the exempt permit for SMSU Foundation for February 9, 2018. Any questions?
So moved.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 26 is Commission Board Liaison Reports. Actually, mine have not met, so we'll move Craig. Steve?
Community Services Advisory Board did not meet. EDA did meet, and really no new updates there. We talked a little bit about the Ralco issue and clarification of that, and hopefully moving forward. There was a presentation by some public housing developers that want to go out to Parkway, and they pitched a fairly good product. We'll see if it comes to fruition. A lot of it depends on the state's grant and financing. Their proposed apartments are beautiful. Heck, I might want them.
We're just write a check.
Yeah, just trying to check.
So, and that's it.
Glenn?
No report.
David?
Mine have not met, but Glenn, question, are we expecting airport to meet next Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Jim?
Mine did not.
Okay, so we'll move then to council member individual items. Agenda item number 27. Jim, let's start on your end.
I just think we as the council need to take note. We had a large group of people here along with what was their petition in the paper. And as I read those names in that petition, a lot of them are, business people in Marshall that can help with the growth. I mean, everybody is important in Marshall, but there are businesses that can help the city grow, and we need to take a serious look at that issue and answer their questions. And as a city, look at growth. I look at our 1.299 growth in the tax base, and to me, that's not good enough. That is a city that is slow growth. It's too slow. It's not good enough. I don't think it's good enough, and we need to look at why. So I think we need to look at those folks and those business people. It's not just contractors. That petition is signed by a lot of business owners too. And I think we as a city need to address that and come to some kind of conclusion so we can keep Marshall growing. Marshall is great. We don't need to make it great again. It is great. but to keep it growing. The other thing I have is Police Officer Marshall left, but I want to commend the Marshall Police Force. And what happened, we have a young exchange student staying with our house, staying with us from Italy. He's with us for a year. And he lost his drone yesterday. And he was just heartbroken. And the police were very wise. When they found it, they took the initiative to figure out who it belonged to and actually call us to get it back to us. They recognized my house from the drone. If that's good or bad, I don't know. But I just want to commend the police that they went the extra step and they impressed this young man from Italy because he's not used to that from a police force. I don't think they get the shout out enough when they do stuff like that. David?
And nothing tonight.
Greg?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, kind of echo what Jim said, and I think we all feel the same way about the folks that attended, and it's been a lot of discussion here and on the street, and I appreciate it and recognize it. And then I also want to put a shout out to Jane. Kyle, you're a good, fast learner. Appreciate that. Sheila, especially, too, for the yeoman's work that you've done, keeping things pushed forward. And then to Carla and everybody, all the department heads and everybody for the work getting into the budget. You know, it's easy when we've got good growth and things are moving forward. And we all know that the budget times are a hell of a lot tougher when we're coming in with more expense growth than we have money growth. And I know that we're going to make some more tough decisions between now and the end of the year when we actually finish the budget out. And I just really appreciate, and I know Glenn said this a number of times, but I appreciate the dialogue, the respectful disagreement that the council has, and I beg the patience of our department heads and our staff as we get through this thing, and that none of us take any of this work personal when we make those tough choices, because we're going to have a lot of work to do between now and the end of the year. And I just want to thank everybody for all the efforts and honest work they put in up till now.
Thank you, Greg. Steve?
The issues that I have, I'd like to reflect on Craig's as well and express my thanks. The biggest issue that I have is that mall parking lot. When are we going to get that guy to fix his mall parking lot? I mean, talk about business and growth. That place is complete disrepair. How do we get him to do something? Because there's still businesses in that mall.
Taxes.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't pay his taxes. There's got to be something that we as a city can do to either spur him to pay his taxes or do something.
Pretty soon the county will have to redo the parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, when you don't you have, that's why your truck broke, Bob, when you drove in the parking lot. The potholes in there will swallow you.
It's pretty scary.
And there's snakes in them all.
Yeah. So probably my understanding would be that Economic Development Director Cal Brink is probably the person who is in most frequent contact with Brian Pawlowski, the owner of not only the parking lot, but the property there. So, Dennis, unless you have...
I have no updates.
No.
No bad news.
Okay. Good point. Glenn?
My issue is skunks. I don't know if you've received calls, but there are skunks in some of the neighborhoods, and people are concerned that they're coming over from Independence Park, and it's my understanding there's other types of critters that are coming over too. And I did talk to the police department about it, and there's certain situations where the police can come in and handle it, and others that there's just not much you can do about it. So, but I don't know if you've gotten calls or not, but I've got some concerns expressed about having skunks in the neighborhood.
Where are they?
You already brought that up with Jim, right?
Yeah, Jim Marshall. Yeah.
Where are they living?
What's that?
There's no place in Independence Park for them to live anymore.
Well,
that's why they're coming into the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Are we a sanctuary city?
Thank you, Glenn. Let's move on then to agenda item number 28. Sharon?
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, I continue to meet with staff and key contacts in the community. I've had some really good discussion with all of you, and I've appreciated the feedback and support that you've given me the first few days on the job. I do want to add one additional comment, and I believe I've discussed this with all the councilmen and I'm sure you're not ready for this tonight, but just as a future thought, as we progress further on the City Hall project, I would appreciate a formation of a committee similar to the one that was put in place for the selection of the architect, with the understanding that the decision makers would be the council and other members would provide input and feedback to the council members. So I just want to add that thought for your consideration at a future meeting.
We'll put that on a future agenda. So, thank you, Sharon. Any questions for Sharon? Thank you for your work thus far. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, if you head out on Highway 68 towards Minneota, you'll see a lot of work going on out there with our contractor. All of the utility work has been completed. Keekly Underground has completed water, sewer, and storm sewer mains completely. Midwest Contracting is continuing to do the landscape or the dirt moving, the road construction, the construction of the 2 stormwater detention ponds, and they expect to work at least a couple more weeks. And maybe, if it stays decent, they'll keep working. So it will be all dependent upon weather conditions, but they're doing a marvelous job of their work out there.
Greg, do you have a comment?
One of the water mains, have they all been pressure tested? Are
Yes.
they released so they're in service then?
Yeah, they I don't know if they're in service, but they've been pressure tested and back to you.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
They're essentially complete.
Very good. Anything else?
No.
Dennis?
Nothing to add.
Okay, then we'll move.
Thank you, Sheila. Welcome, Sharon. Or Shirley, wherever you are.
Whoa.
No, that was absolutely the best on the welcome.
Good thing.
We'll move then to agenda item number 31.
He didn't hear that.
Hopefully, yeah.
One more. So the pending agenda items, of course, this is where we'll add the appointment of the City Hall Committee, information items, agenda item number 32, including the building permits, agenda item number 33, listing of the upcoming meetings, including the meeting tomorrow evening. I will not be in attendance, so David, you'll convene that meeting.
I may be a little bit late, but I'm hoping not. I'm going to be in St. Paul, but I'm going to try to get back here by 5:30. So,
Which brings us to agenda item number 34, to consider adjournment of this meeting.
So move.
Motion by David, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Yeah, sure, you betcha.
Motion passes.